is a fictional role play. All characters are fictional. Hi, Charlie.
Hi,
Welcome back.
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, so. I'm just kind of excited to be here today and talk with you.
You are? Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when it's gonna seem a little silly, but one thing that I like to do to get started is just to kind of make sure that you're kind of aware of where we are and why we're here and all of that. And we'll kind of go over a few things. I know we talked a little bit last week about a few things, but we'll probably go over some of those things in more detail. Okay. So,
Okay.
can you tell me what your full name is?
Yes, my name is Charlie Dorfman.
Okay. And do you know where you are right now?
Yep. Your office, I believe, over off of First Street.
Okay, good. And do you know what day it is?
Yes, it's Saturday, March 16th, I believe.
Okay. Do you know what time?
About 1:30.
Okay, good. Perfect. Okay. And do you ever hear, see, or smell things that other people tell you aren't actually there?
No, not that I know of.
Okay. All right, good. I know those seem silly, but it just kind of lets us know kind of what mind frame people are in, okay?
Mhm.
Okay. So last week we talked a little bit about the reasons why you and your family have come for services. So, and I know you said you're doing okay, but can you kind of tell me how your last week has gone since we met, and then we'll kind of get into some other things?
Yeah, it's been about usual, kind of stuff going on at home. My wife Nancy and I, we have sometimes we have some struggles and whatnot, but, I do love her a lot, but, she wants me to get a job, and it's not that, that I'm not trying. I just, haven't had so much luck. And then, my daughter Rena, she actually just moved out. She used to live downstairs from us, and she's moved out and got her own place. And while she still lives kind of close, it's still stressful on my wife because, she tends to worry a lot. And then, of course, we've got Michael, who, I kind of consider him almost a brother, just because we, they can bicker him back and forth. And but he's got a lot of medical problems and stuff, and he's had asthma since he was a young kid. So it's been a little bit stressful, but I would say nothing out of the norm for us.
So it sounds like the bickering and the fighting is normal for you guys.
Yeah, I'd say so. Well, of course, with Rena not being around, I don't really bicker with her as much anymore, but her and my wife kind of go at it sometimes. But yeah, me and my wife, we bicker about the more adult things and bills and, and that kind of stuff, and finding a job. And she wants me to, I guess, apply for disability, but I don't need that. And then me and my son and whatnot, he just kind of, it's going to sound horrible, but kind of gets on my nerves sometimes. But I think that's just because we're so much alike.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good. It's good that you can kind of identify. It sounds like you love your family very much. So
Definitely.
there's definitely a good basis to work with there. You mentioned a couple things about each of your families, so I think I'll just kind of break it down. We'll talk about your family a little bit individually, but let's start with your wife, Nancy. So
Okay.
tell me a little bit about what your relationship with Nancy is like.
Well, I love her. She's the best woman. She's the best wife and the best mom. And she does worry a lot, but I know it's deep down, it is probably from, good intentions. It started off, I don't really know. I guess I just wooed her. I've always had wild dreams and expectations, and I kind of wanted to make something for myself. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that kind of just drew her in. But now as we've gotten older, I'm 51 years old now. So, I think maybe she's kind of getting tired of my, grand schemes and expectations of reality, and kind of wants me just to focus a little bit and settle down and kind of just help support and provide for the family. So lately that's caused some conflict between us. We kind of are, like I said, argue about bills and whatnot, but I'd overall describe our relationship as, fairly well, just has some tension lately.
Okay. So you mentioned that she wanted you to apply for disability. Do you have an injury or an illness, or can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, I was diagnosed with bipolar depression. I did have a crisis a few years back and was hospitalized, and that's been my only hospitalization. But that really, dealing with my bipolar depression, they managed me on lithium, and so, I guess it kind of, I don't want to say numbs me, but it kind of makes me, my drive is a little bit out of whack, and I don't really feel like kind of doing much. And, and other than, normal aches and pain and stuff, but I guess she just wants me to look into that and see if maybe there's a reason why I might qualify for that. And then overall it might make it easier for us.
And is she looking at does she feel like you aren't able to work? Is she looking at that from a financial situation, or what is her idea behind you getting disability?
Well, like I said, I'll be honest, I haven't held a job very well. Each job that I've had, usually I don't have problems getting job, but I never hold them very long. My longest job was actually when I was in the Air Force. I had that for about 4 years. And that kind of gives you some perspective on my length of careers. I think she thinks I just can't do it. I think she thinks that I'm just not able to hold a job. And of course, now with me not being able to find a job, I feel like I'm kind of, confirming her ideas in regard to that. And I think she thinks my bipolar is to the point where, it impacts my ability to be able to regulate my emotions at work and, hold a job.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So she's thinking not only for what's best for you, but also maybe a little bit of financial.
Yeah, finances. Things are definitely difficult when in our household. Like I said, we argue about money frequently. Bills kind of pile up, and I think she thinks I don't care about it or I don't worry about it, but I really do. She's already worrying for the both of us, it seems. So the last thing I want to do is, go in and tell her how screwed we are for this week. Excuse my language, but that's kind of how we feel most of the time. And so, in my efforts to try to keep a cool face, I think she thinks I don't take it seriously, but definitely, because we live off basically, because she used to be an RN. So she was making pretty good money. And then I had my, job here and there and whatnot. But right now we've been mainly just surviving off her disability. So I think she thinks, if I were to get an incoming check as well, it might kind of help ease some of the burden.
Okay. All right. So, it sounds like the conflict that you and your wife have, for the most part, is surrounding work and money and trying to make ends meet. Does that sound fair?
I'd say so, yeah.
What about your wife's, you and your wife's ability to parent? Do you guys parent the same? Do you parent together? How does that look when you guys are dealing with the kids?
We have similarities and differences, I'd say. We both obviously want what's best for our kids. We actually adopted Rena because we were told that my wife wouldn't be able to conceive and whatnot. And then later on, we had Michael, surprise. But I would say, our tactics are similar, but maybe our outcomes are a little different, if that makes sense. As I want to bond with my son, but a lot of times it ends up with me, arguing with him, and I feel like him and I don't have the best relationship in terms of parenting. He considers me as more of a friend than a parent. And so, oftentimes Nancy has to come in and break us apart because we'd be in the living room arguing over a video game or something. So,
right.
And then with my daughter, Rena, that's kind of iffy. She's, like I said, she's not living with us lately. So, I don't have to parent her as much, I guess, but a few years back, things got a little heated between her and my wife. And unfortunately, I pulled her off my wife and did, there was some, physical component to that. But we've kind of moved past that and worked through that.
Okay. All right. So would you say, when you are having conflict with others, like your wife or your son or Rena, what does that look like? Do you have discussions? Do you throw punches? Do you yell and scream at each other, storm off? How do you guys, when you're not getting along or agreeing with each other, how does that message get across?
I would say, I don't resort to violence or, any kind of physical aggression or anything like that. Like I said, that one time things were just so heated that I could kind of just pull Marina off and, what happened. But, in my childhood, my mom actually used to beat on my dad quite a bit. So I don't really like to use physical aggression. I would consider myself more of laid back guy, but I do get in there and yell with my family, with my wife when things get to that point. I do yell. Um, but I would say more so, I kind of, I guess, remove myself from the situation. My wife, it seems kind of like she's arguing or nagging. And a lot of times, I just kind of avoid it. Will go out. I like to do a comedy routine sometimes, like on the weekends and stuff. So, I'll kind of, if we're in the middle of an argument, I will, leave the house and go on a walk and might end up, doing a comedy show or something like that. Or, go play video games with my son as far as my wife and I get along. With my kids, I'd say it's probably more yelling with my kids and more of, avoiding the situation with my wife.
Okay. All right. So let's switch a little bit between you and Michael. You mentioned that you and Michael are more like brothers than father son. What do you think about that relationship? Do you think that's the way you like it? Do you wish things were different? Tell me more about your interactions with Michael and how that goes.
Well, I definitely do love the idea of us bonding, and I like us, we sometimes we go out fishing or playing video games or something, and I do like to have those moments, but he also needs to, I wish, if something were to change, I wish he would recognize that, I am dad and I am the parent, and he's able to maybe take my direction a little bit better. So I don't know if that's something that, if I'm doing wrong or something that he, needs to work on, but I would say our relationship right now is like like we said, more like brothers than father and son, and that's something I'd like to work on because it just isn't working quite right.
Okay, so you mentioned just a minute ago that when you would like for him to see you more like dad, like when you tell him to do something or if something's going on, you'd like him to picture you more like dad. How do you know that he doesn't see you that way? What kinds of ways does he interact with you, or does he say things to you that leads you to believe that he does not see you as a father figure?
Yeah, like I said, he argues with me a lot, and I remember, growing up, if I argued with my mom or my dad, that wasn't going to happen. Like they said what they said, and that was it. It went, and I was, responsible for doing my part. And so a lot of times, he doesn't do his chores around the house, and I try to get on to him, and he thinks it's a discussion when really it's not a discussion. It's you do this because you're my kid. And I try not to be too harsh, but he'll say things like, I don't have to listen to you, or I'm going to go tell mom, or I'm going to ask mom, what I need to do because you can't tell me what to do. So I just think sometimes he just doesn't take it seriously.
Okay. So maybe a little lack of respect there, you think?
Definitely, I'd say so.
Okay. So you mentioned the interaction with him and your wife. So if Nancy tells him to do something, is it different, or does he argue and kind of go back and forth with her as well?
I'd say for the most part, it is different. I mean, usually she's the final, she has the final say around the house. And, that kind of makes me feel a little, less of a parent and less of a head of household figure. Cause yeah, both kids really more so respond to their direction more than mine.
Okay.
So.
Okay. So let's switch for a second to Rena. You mentioned she's not in the house anymore. Was she living with you before?
So, yeah, this kind of comes back to that, like I said, that one major incident we had about 2 years ago when she was 16. Around that time, because we live in a duplex, it's been in my wife's family for several years. And so she moved downstairs after that incident, and that way she could have her own space and the three of us could have our own space, but she could still be close and, technically under our roof. But we told her when she was 18, she needed to get her own place. And so now she's off doing her own thing. She lives, a couple streets down, but, I don't really see her a whole lot anymore because she's not right there with us.
Okay. When she was living with you, how would you describe your relationship with her?
I'd say similar to my son's, just not as intense. I think she has a little bit more, and she is older, so I think she has a little bit better of a comprehension that I am dad. So we might bicker, here and there, but I think with her it's a little bit different. That I think she has a little bit more respect for me than Michael does. It might take her take me a couple times of telling her what she needs to do, but generally she, will fall in line when she needs to.
Okay. Um, so when you say, how often do you see Rena now, and what are those interactions like? Do you think her not being in the house is helping the situation or making it worse, or doesn't really matter either way?
Well, so I see her about maybe once a week, compared to, I've seen her probably every day. I think overall things are better because there's less arguing in the house between her and my wife.
Okay.
But with that said, like I said, my wife is definitely a worrier. And so with her not being right there, my wife has kind of gotten to the point where she's constantly worrying about, what she's doing, why she doesn't have a job, why is she being lazy. And, I worry about the same things. But like I said, two worriers in one house isn't always the best. So,
Okay. So how does your wife react when she's really worried about something, and you say you try not to let her know that you're worried because she's already worried enough? So do
mhm.
you think that's helpful to her for you to not worry, or how does she respond to that technique?
I don't really know. I just feel like right now at the point we're at that if, I try to maintain the cool headed one most times when I can. And so if I were to start worrying, I'm afraid of what might happen to her because if she sees that I'm worrying, that might just send her, over the edge in a sense. So, a lot of times she likes to get vocal when she worries because I feel like, me personally, I feel like she thinks that no one's listening to her either.
Hmm.
But really, at least I am, I hear what she's saying. I just, like I said, I don't want to set her off knowing that I'm worried as well. So, a lot of times I see her yelling at me and the kids to kind of manage that worrying. And then it gets to a point where, if we're not, able to meet those expectations of hers or that kind of stuff, that she kind of just shuts herself off. I mean, she'll go into the bedroom and she'll lay in bed and watch TV and, eat snack food and stuff. And she's really at that point where I feel like she's had enough of us.
Hmm. Okay. So how would you like to see those interactions go differently? I mean, I know you can't control somebody else's behavior, but if there was something to work on with your relationship together in those situations, how would you like to see? Let's say there's an altercation between the kids, or some sort of family confrontation going on. How would
Mhm.
you like to see those handled with you and your wife as a unit? That isn't
You
happening.
know, I would like to see. I'd like for her to know that she's not in this alone. We're in it together. And when there is conflict within our family or within our kids, I want us to both co-parent, if that makes sense. I don't want her to be the one that's the only authoritative figure in the house. So her realizing that I am here and I am here to help, and that she doesn't have to worry about everything. That's what I would like to see. I'd like to see us both, having equal amount of say between what we tell our kids and her knowing that she doesn't have to bear all that on her shoulders alone.
Have the two of you ever had that conversation before, and how did that go?
No, I don't think we really have had that conversation now that you say that, just because, a lot of times when it comes down to it, I think a lot of us, both of us avoid situations. I'll go out and do my comedy routine and she might get into bed and, after we've had our argument, that's kind of where we fall at. So I think we've never actually had that conversation of, me letting her know that, I'm here to support the family and be that father figure that, I'm here to be.
Mhm. So, I'm going to kind of rephrase, and you tell me if I'm wrong. So it sounds like when you have a confrontation, it's kind of in the heat of the moment, and you have your confrontation or your argument, and then it either kind of fizzles out, or you get to the point where you feel like she's just done, and so she goes and kind of secludes herself from the rest of the family, and then you go and do something else like the comedy routine. So
Yep.
either fighting or you're apart. Does that sound fair?
I'd say so, yeah, because there's moments. Don't get me wrong, of times where we're um, fine,
Mhm.
but a lot of times we get in an argument and either afterwards we're kind of irritated with each other, or like you said, it gets to that point where we're just our separate ways, and that's how we deal with it.
Okay. All right. So you've mentioned the comedy routine a couple of times now. So what is that something that is stress relieving for you, and tell me a little bit about why you do that and how it makes you feel when you do it.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorite things to do. If I could do that as a full-time job, I would, just because, I like going out and making people laugh and making people feel good. It kind of makes me feel better about myself. So, because a lot of times at home, I feel like I'm not that person. So I don't know if you ever heard of him, but I go by the name Joe Penn. So if you're ever around, you have to catch a show. But it's just the coolest thing. I get to go in and I feel comfortable and confident, and I feel confident in my ability to go on stage and have a good show, and people react and they enjoy what I do. And I've even gotten a couple autographs outside of the studio, and it's kind of cool for me to be recognized. I really do like that part of it. So I mean, the whole thing is just something I really enjoy to do. And when it comes to work, I don't like really, I'm good at being a janitor, but I don't like being a janitor. I really like connecting people when I'm going through one of my comedy routines. But
Okay. Okay. So what else is there anything that you and your family do socially together? It sounds like you really like the comedy routine, but that's something you do by yourself, which is fine. But is there anything that you guys do as a family for social enjoyment or to get out with other people?
Not really. We had a couple friends, around the time, before we had kids, when we first got married, and then when we first had Rena. But since then, our family, friends, and our social circle has kind of fizzled out. But I'd really say at this time, the only thing that we do together as a family, which now it's not so much Rena anymore, but we might go grocery shopping together. But really, that's just because my wife doesn't trust me to get the stuff by myself.
Okay. Okay. Um, okay. So is there anything else that you would like to talk a little bit about that we haven't already covered?
Not really, just maybe kind of improving, the family dynamic that we've got, and maybe less arguing and more, coming together.
It kind of sounds like you want to get back to kind of those more, I don't want to say normal, but traditional roles of father and husband, and kind of get back into a place where you feel like more of an equal. Does that sound fair?
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. Being equal would be really important to me. And I think that helped alleviate a lot of the stress.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Well, that is definitely something we can look at moving forward. And of course, at some point, we'll bring Nancy in as well. But I think working on some of these things with you to begin with will get us a good start.
All right. Awesome.
Okay. Well, I'll just touch base and we will see each other sometime next week. Okay.
Sounds good. I'll be looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm.